agree that there's been a lot of excitement in the fashion industry, from the creative director, head designer, seat shuffle, or musical chairs that a lot of the publications are calling it. But I think that there's something way more interesting happening. Here's what nobody's talking about. These designers aren't just swapping seats. They're bringing the DNA of some of the old design houses into the new. They're creating an incredible conversation that's all about fashion design house legacy. Today, we're going to break down some of the major moves. We're going to be showing some before and afters, and we're going to analyze how each designer is bringing some of their past into the present. So let's start with one of the biggest shakeups. Demna leaving Balenciaga for over 10 years, serving 10 years, to go and take over Gucci. Demna invented what we're calling sort of this fashion dystopian cool. He gave us oversized hoodies, really played with proportions, and countless number of viral moments. Here's where it gets interesting. When Demna dropped his 38 looks for Gucci, he didn't abandon that provocative nature that was at Balenciaga. He took that and channeled it into Italian glamour. The horsebit hardware, the double G's, still there, but now it's got a little bit of attitude. And I also love that accompanying this 38 look collection, there was a movie, a short film that came out that kind of explored the idea of ego and perfection. And I'm not going to give a full review of the movie. I would definitely recommend that you guys go and watch it. But I think it was really interesting because fashion was obviously the main star, even though it was a star-studded cast. And I think that it really kind of explored some ideas of vanity. And for those of you out there like myself that tend to be obsessed with perfection sometimes and doing a great job, I think it touched on a lot of those themes. So definitely check it out. And I'm excited to see what Demna does with Gucci as we move into the next season. Now, speaking of Gucci, let's talk about Alessandro Michele. This man literally defined that maximalism aesthetic that we know of in Gucci, making the ugly beautiful. One of the most memorable shows from Alessandro was the Gucci Twin Show, where it was all about mixing and matching patterns, shiny fabrics with textured fabrics and color mixing, and really sort of just giving that over the top, I like to call it kind of 70s glamour. So naturally, when he landed at Valentino, he brought that whole aesthetic with him, except this time he filtered it through the romantic lens of Valentino. Valentino is a brand that we know that has a certain level of sophistication, and they really kind of went after these statement pieces. When you think of Valentino, you would think of the color red, except for Pier Paolo's Valentino Pink collection, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But again, you didn't see a lot of mixing of color palettes with the old guard at Valentino. So it's really interesting when you look at this debut collection of 85 looks, yes, 85 looks, and while he brought that maximalist over the top aesthetic, he really sort of deep dived into the archives of Valentino in the 60s and 70s, because again, I think that's a time period where Alessandro feels most comfortable. And he took those polka dots and those ruffles and really just layered in his style and point of view of maximalism. It's that same eccentric opulence that we saw at Gucci, but now just with Alessandro codes. Now let's talk about Dior. When I think about old Dior and Dior codes, I think about pristine and pretty and proper and a proper lady. So when Jonathan Anderson from Loewe was announced to take the seat, I think everybody stood up at attention and was really curious to see what this collection would look like and what he would do with the brand. For 11 years, Jonathan Anderson took Loewe, which started out as this really cool leather brand, into something a lot more interesting, and ultimately turning it into a cultural hit. Let's think about the Loewe tomato. One of the most memorable looks for me was what I call those Polly Pocket outfits, and really kind of played with fabrication to make things look really interesting and really cool, and some amazing art pieces. So with this latest women's wear collection, he took that same approach and started a different conversation about Dior's heritage. One of the first things that I learned in fashion school is that fashion is evolutionary, not revolutionary. So it's all about taking the old and making it new. And Jonathan Anderson did just that with his Dior collection. Jack and Lazaro, who are the founding members of Proenza Schouler, took over that empty seat at Loewe. Now, these two defined what New York downtown cool was for the past 20 years. And for all of my fashion students out there, what was really cool about this duo is that they sold their fashion thesis to Barney's straight out of Parsons. And yes, I'm a FIT girl, but I love my brothers and sisters at Parsons. And yes, there is sort of like this unspoken rivalry, but at the end of the day, we're all rooting for each other. So ahead of their debut over at Loewe, everybody was wondering how they were going to take this very New York architectural style over to Loewe. And what did they do? They brought that precise tailoring, those cutouts, the unexpected geometric details, and applied it to Loewe's leather good mastery. It's sharp, it's modern, and I could already see that there's going to be a lot of it pieces that are going to come out of this collection. So you might be wondering next, if you don't already know, who took that seat at Proenza Schouler. And this is one that I'm really excited about for a lot of reasons. Rachel Scott, who was a Women's Wear CFD Award winner. Rachel launched her collection, Diotima, just 4 years ago. Incredible. Her signature is these crochet pieces that really celebrated her Jamaican Caribbean background. She definitely brings craft, culture, and a very interesting global perspective to the fashion world. And I'm really excited to see her bring that fresh female perspective to American sportswear. And now, closing the circle, so the first design move that we talked about was Demna moving to Gucci after 10 years at Balenciaga. So you might be wondering, who is taking that seat? So the closed circle is no other than Pier Paolo Piccoli, who is from Valentino, as we mentioned earlier, who served 25 years at Valentino and really sort of established what we know of Valentino today. He's known for bringing the entire atelier on stage for bows, of naming garments after the seamstresses who worked on them. He's really about the people. And I want to say that one year when he came out with the Valentino Pink, that collection literally took over all the red carpets that year. And what's crazy is he's now at Balenciaga. That's something that I don't think I could have fathomed in my wildest imagination. It's so fascinating because it's such a different aesthetic. Demna did dystopia and edge. Pier Paolo does color and poetry. So how is that going to manifest itself at Balenciaga? And what did he do? He killed it. He did everything that we thought he was going to do. In an interview, he said that he was inspired by a single couture dress by Cristobal Balenciaga. It was the sack dress of 1957. And my argument always, sorry, just to take a minute to go back to Demna, is that a lot of people felt like Demna was such a disruptor, and because of his sort of edge that he brought to Balenciaga, that was in contrast. But when I did a little bit of a deep dive and I did some history on Cristobal Balenciaga, truly when the label started, it was always a disruptor brand. Back at the time when Balenciaga launched, all the girls were stuck and corseted into these Dior looks, and some credit Balenciaga and sometimes Coco Chanel for just freeing women of those tight, form-fitting, confining clothes. So Pier Paolo kind of took that sensibility. He really admired Cristobal Balenciaga, and he thought of him as somebody who was a minimalist and a maximalist at the same time. So he kind of played upon that in this new collection. He was able to bring his color mastery, and he still kept it really cool and really edgy so that it didn't feel like a stark change from the last creative direction. So kudos to all these designers, and they all gave us amazing first collections. I'm really excited to see how the heritage of these design houses continue to evolve in seasons ahead. So with all these moves, it's not just about new collections. It's about creative cross-pollination. These houses are having conversations about brand identities, and we're all getting to watch it and experience it in real time. There was an exhibit at the Met a few years ago, well, more than a few years ago. I want to say it might have been 10 to 15 years ago. Don't quote me on it. But it was an exhibit called impossible conversations. And the whole idea is, what if and Elsa Schiaparelli sat down and had a conversation? And I loved the concept then, and I remember buying the exhibit book, and I still have it, and I flip through it from time to time because it's such an interesting cross section of ideas. And I think that is literally what we're living with all of these design house seat switches. So after hearing me yap, what design moves were you most excited about? Were there any that were a disappointment? Let me know in the comments. And of course, for my girls whose checking accounts are set up the way that I am, if you want a way to get these looks on a budget, I'm definitely going to be continuing to do more content over the season and putting some items in my LTK shop so you guys can look like you're fresh off of the runways, but at a better price. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on your notifications because we're going to be giving a lot more content about just all the exciting things that are happening in the fashion industry. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.